Good morning. Can you guys hear me okay?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Perfect. Got just a few more folks to join and then we'll get started. Hold on. Thank you, Shelley. I got your chat.
Hello.
Good morning. How is everybody?
Good. How are you?
I'm doing really good.
Yeah, plugging it in tends to help.
You know, I was thinking that over the time that we've been together, I've held more labs in hotel rooms in strange cities than I do at home. So today I am in a little town called Corvallis. Actually, I'm in Hamilton, Montana. My 30-year high school reunion is today.
Oh, congratulations.
If you do the math, you now know how old I am, I guess.
Unless you're a really bad student.
No, but actually, yeah, I was not a bad student, but
I don't think any of us were.
Back when I was going to high school, they had senior night, the night of graduation, and then they locked you in a gym and you danced and did games, and then the next morning they let you out, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I was already packed. My car was all the way packed, and that next morning I grabbed my keys, I got a cup of coffee, kissed my mom goodbye, and drove to Arizona.
Mm-hmm.
And I only go home for graduations and funerals, so I don't come home very often.
It always happens that way. We always go to Kansas for the same thing.
So what I was hoping to do this morning, so we'll go ahead and get started. I want to take the first few minutes of our calls when we're here together to just make sure that I am aligned on when everybody's next deliverable is. So let's take a few minutes, and I'm gonna go through the roster and just make sure that I have the most updated when the next deliverable is. So I'll start with Christina. Christina, your prospectus and 10 points are due today. Can you hear me?
Yep, I can.
Okay, so today is 8/10, so I have Christina's prospectus to me today, right? Christina?
She's on mute.
So if you don't answer, that's a yes. No. It works that way, right? Okay. Let's go to Katya. What is your next deliverable, and when is it due to me?
Well, I was late with my deliverable. I received my 2 chapters from Thinking Storm.
Okay.
And I was looking for outside editor to help me to do the finish touches. And I couldn't reach the one that was recommended to me. So I'm asking all the students if they know good editor that I can hire from outside. And I also talked yesterday to my school, the teacher who helps me with editing, and she lives on the lake right now, but she said she can help me on Monday. So the next week my class is over, but at the end of the class, I'm hoping to turn it into you.
So you can get it to me by Friday?
I hope so.
Okay. So assuming that you can get an editor on Monday, send me a text or a quick email and let me know what their turnaround time is, because I don't want you to not get the editor's feedbacks incorporated in your next draft. It's more important that that happens. So if you get your editor and they can turn it around in time for you to do your edits, then let's keep to the 8/17 due date.
Okay, thank you.
Chapter 1 and 3. But if for any reason your editor can't get you their feedback until like Friday, then we will extend it till the following Friday to make sure that you have enough time to incorporate their review into your next draft. Is that fair?
Yes.
Okay.
It will work for me.
Claudia, can I suggest something? I heard in when I was at the third residency that we can go through Thinking Storm, and that they actually have editors there that can do editing further than what our services.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm not quite sure how you make that happen, but apparently some of those folks actually do have editing services.
I will look into it. Thank you, Karen.
Yeah, I hear they're more affordable too. I'm looking for an editor too, so I understand, but I was going to try that.
I was using Thinking Storm, and I exhausted like how many hours they give you, so I was going to pay anyways.
Oh, okay.
Another run, but now I'm gonna call them and ask if they have the editor that can help me on a higher level.
Okay. No, that's great. And Karen, thank you for sharing that tip. Just one thing to keep in mind for those of you that have been waiting for an editor, you've got to get this done. I mean, you've got to find an editor. It's as easy as finding a plumber or a babysitter or a dog walker. Go find your editor. Go on Yelp, go on the internet. Like, there's a million options out there. If they give you not good feedback, go find somebody else.
Another source too is, another source is if you go through GCU, help me fill in, and G-Tom, because you guys are on there too, is that you guys turned me on to it on Facebook. There's a group of GCU doctoral learners. Oh my goodness, the information on that page is phenomenal. And then the people, and if you just, like G-Tom, you told me, just put your problem in there, put it out there to them and see what resources can come back. I got a lot of help with my perspectives just doing that, just saying, hey, I'm stuck at this point right here. I can't seem to put it together any advice. And everybody's in the same struggle as we are, just different phases. I see you on there too, Phil, talking sometimes. So you might want to try looking for an editor through that resource, right? That's helpful.
Thank you, Karen.
You're welcome, huh?
So however you get it done, don't let the fact that you're struggling to find an editor be your reason for not progressing. Okay, I mean, Karen's just shared an amazing resource. Get out there. It shouldn't take more than a day or two, seriously, to find an editor, right? Give them a couple pages, have them give you a test feedback. If you don't like their feedback, give those pages
for free, won't they, Dr. Behling, just that test feedback, particularly if they want the business. That's a good idea. I would think that they would take it and say, here, this is what I do. Just a matter of sending an email, right?
Mm-hmm. Okay. Thank you.
Okay, so let's go on. Jaitanya, what is your next deliverable? And
I thought it was yesterday, and then I looked at one more section to do. Okay. So I'm still on board for Thursday, if not before Thursday.
So Thursday is for you to submit to IRB, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
I thought it was yesterday.
You're good. So Thursday is the 15th?
Yep.
Okay.
Thank you.
You're welcome. So while we're on that point, when you guys submit to IRB, once you go through and you've gone through all of the check marks for the application, you are the one that submits and then it gets routed to me. But it's really, really critical. I don't want to wait until that night or the weekend. The process is once you submit your IRB application, you're 100% ready that you've checked all the boxes and everything is good, and you send me an email with the link to your IRB application page, your account, then what I can do is at work, I jump in there, I click on submit, and I get that into the IRB and they assign you to a reviewer. So we save a couple days by me being able to have that link. So please remember that process. Once you submit, send me an email with the link, and then I'll go in there same day. As soon as I see your email to my Yahoo account, I'll go in there and I'll submit you to IRB. And just a friendly reminder, they are not on a 10-day turnaround. So they need to, they'll jump in and they'll assign you a reviewer within 48 hours. But if they send it back and say, hey, dear student, you're missing this and this and this, or these things need to be fixed, the clock's on pause. So this is the part in the process that you can really move the needle by being very responsive. So once you go into IRB, just know, right, that you need to be checking your account. You need to be following up with the reviewer because they will give you tasks to do, and then the time is paused. So please be very responsive in this process. Just know that you are driving the turnaround time. And they are going to be really picky. And I think I mentioned this last month too. They will be very picky on every single document that's in there. So just be ready for that. Okay. So I've got Jaitanya to do the IRB submission on the 15th. Karen, when is your next deliverable? And what is your next deliverable and when is it due?
My next deliverable are the feedback items that I received in the third residency. They're due the 24th, and I should have them to you hopefully before that even, because I know exactly what they want me to do, and I just have to get in there and do it.
So the 24th is your...
The 24th is what you requested for me, and I'm certain I can make that deadline.
Perfect.
Okay.
That's your updated deadline, right?
You were a little broken up, but I think that was an affirmation of what I just said.
10 points?
The 10 points, correct.
Due to me.
Yes. Do you care to have that whole 10-point expanded PowerPoint? Are you interested in that too?
I do not.
Okay.
Well, I only want your 10 points in a very short, one sentence, quick recap. One sentence for each point, remember?
Not really, no.
Okay, so your 10 points, when you turn in your 10 points to me with each document, I don't want paragraphs. I don't want it to be a 10-page document. It should be 2 to 3 pages max, including...
Oh, I got you. Okay.
Okay.
I misunderstood what you said.
Okay. Anybody else have questions on what I mean by the 10 points deliverable that goes with your documents? Every single time you turn that into me. And we're going to cover that when we jump into lab. So just a reminder that 10 points is due every single time you send me a document. Your review will not start if you don't send me the 10 points, because your methodologist and myself, we will jump into the 10 points first and make sure that they're all aligned. That's our pre-check. And then once we see that it's all aligned, then we'll go into your document. So that's really, really important that you guys are keeping your 10 points aligned and then go into your regular document. So just a friendly reminder, I'm sure most of you guys do a really great job of submitting both, but just make sure you keep doing that. Lisa, when is your next deliverable due and what is it?
It's this perspective, and I don't think you gave me a date.
So when is it due back to residency?
It's already submitted to residency.
When is there, so you were supposed to do all of the feedback, right? And then it's due back to them. What was that due date?
No, it was the 10 points that they wanted back. And it was was due back last day of, I think the 30th, we had to have it in.
Okay, so when will you be getting me your next draft of your prospectus and 10 points?
My next draft should be, you should have my perspective by Friday. I just got it back from Thinking Storm and I'm doing the revisions.
Okay. So I have you
I
down
want to
for,
resubmit it back to Thinking Storm one more time.
okay. So could you have it back to me by Friday the 16th, your final draft?
Yeah, I'll have it to you by Friday.
Okay. Perfect. And Tara, I have your draft already and it's in review. What are you working on now?
Chapter 1,
Okay.
and I should be able to get you that by September 4th.
And when will you have chapter 2 ready for review?
I'm not sure. I kind of wanted to see Dr. Mortimer's comments from chapter 3 because of all the changes, changing my design,
Okay.
and then kind of go from there.
Okay. Make sure that you have already gone in there and outlined the chapter and that you have a pretty good
Yeah.
idea of what your lit review is going to look like, at least from an outline perspective. There's a lot of work that needs to be done in chapter 2 to make sure that your references are updated to the expectations of AQR. Don't wait until you get Dr. Mortimer's feedback to get chapter 2 in at least a really good working draft, or it might be a couple months before you'll be ready to send it in.
Okay. I'm currently working on it.
Okay.
Dr. Behling, do you know about that resource that we can use that checks your references as you write and it makes sure it's in alignment? I'd have to look at my notes, but somebody in our class was talking about that too and warning us not to wait too late in the process to really start keeping your references tight, because this person who's actually a pretty good writer, she waited toward a lot of her writing was done, and she said it was a nightmare. The thing she would pass on is to get that reference. I'll have to look it up, you guys. I'm sorry, I don't remember it off the top of my head, but it's a reference website or software, but you enter it in as you go, and it helps you keep that tight so that we don't have to have such a. Has anybody heard of that?
Are you talking about RefWorks?
No, RefWorks is more like a repository and helps you sort that. RefWorks is more like EndNote. I'm talking about something that actually helps us format. It doesn't format it for you, but it's almost like Grammarly that picks up your grammar errors, but it picks up your references. It pulls it up. It scans the whole document. It tells you where your duplications are, where you're misformatted. Okay, I'll try and find out what that was, even if I have to ask Dr. Moss, because they talked about it in detail. But it sounds like a really good resource. I'm not there yet, but it sounds like something you guys might benefit.
Yeah, I could definitely use that.
So class, Karen, thank you for bringing that up. Guys, this is just a reminder, you are independent scholars. My minimum expectation is that you're already doing this. We've talked about this in multiple labs, and I don't want to get on my soapbox for every single topic, but you have got to be keeping track of your in-text citations and your reference list. There's a lot of software out there. Karen mentioned one, but you own making sure that those are connected as you go along. If you have not gotten that started yet, go out there, go to YouTube, Google it. There's a huge world out there of not only doctoral students, but there's a ton of software. So don't wait. Karen made a great point. Just make sure that if this is something that you don't already have a process for, my expectation is that you already recognize where there's a gap in getting you from here to being published, and you're already figuring out resources that you need in order to find that, right? So if you have an editor, a couple of the students that have already graduated, they had an editor that they paid to do this. The editor used the software, the editor built that into their quote, and they didn't have to worry about it. You don't have an editor yet. So all I'm saying is, There's some topics that we've brought up over the last year or so. Just make sure that you're owning any gap between where your writing is now and where it needs to be published. Okay?
Apparently our library resources had a lot more to offer than I ever thought about. I never met with the librarian until this last time, and I really suggest we get online and do that too, because you can just go in and make an appointment with them, online. But she was phenomenal, and some of the things that she told me about how to gather resources, how to keep all of these articles. You know how we have a bazillion articles somewhere?
Yeah.
She helped me figure out how to get that stuff cleaned up, sorted, understand what I have, so I don't just have everything I've downloaded since Jesus was a baby. And that's what I have in mind, was a complete hot mess. And she told me, don't wait too late with that either. So I'm going to go online and have a conference with the librarian. I really think it's a good thing to help us along too. As far as the GCU research, we're paying for it anyway. May as well use them, right?
Thank you, Karen. Philip, what is your next deliverable and when is it due?
I'm working on those revisions from the IRB right now. I still have a couple of those left. The one thing I was wanting to ask you about is, do you remember I had 3 site authorizations from 3 different groups? Now, when I went to put that in the IRB, it seems like it's only wants to take one and it won't let me put the others in there. Any thoughts on that?
Yeah, so that's going to be a kind of a one-off situation. Connect with your IRB reviewer right away and let them know what is the process for that. It might be that they need to submit the other 2 for you. Go ahead, Shelley.
How about saving them all as one document?
Yeah, that's what I was about to say. Make them one PDF.
But just be careful with that, Philip. That's great recommendation. But Philip, just be careful because they might have to go through a separate process for each individual site. So just ask what is the process they want you to follow, because it's pretty picky at that point. But what Shelley and Jaitanya just mentioned, that might be the workaround, but just make sure that they're approving that before you submit it so you don't waste going through a whole nother cycle for them to tell you it's not right. But your
okay, sounds good. Other than that,
go ahead.
The few revisions they suggested all seem pretty straightforward, and I think I should, other than that site authorization issue, I should be able to get all that done by probably tomorrow.
Okay.
But in the meantime, it's all kind of been rolling pretty quickly here between AQR, and then I was making the the revisions that popped up in AQR and the defense call, and then I started working on my my proposal to put it in past tense. I got probably not even halfway through on that, and then the stuff from the IRB came back. So.
Are you using an editor for transferring your chapters to past tense?
I haven't. I was just doing that myself.
Okay.
But I have used the editor. I did use an editor prior to get the proposal ready for submission. I think she was very helpful. Okay. I plan on using her again. I've already had made contact with her and thanked her for her great work for the first 3 chapters, and said I'll be looking to send the other 2 chapters to her in the near future.
Phil, how much is that costing you? I know you sent me that resource, and would you? I'm really struggling with stuff like passive language, so I'm just going to get one early. I thought it would be a waste of money to do it too early, but I'm really believing now that it's never too early to do it. So how are you doing? Are you submitting it? They turn it back to you completed, or do you have to do anything else after you get the editor?
I submitted the first 3 chapters to her. It took her, I can't remember how many days, but it took a few days, and she sent it back with all of her edits. I'd have to look it back up to verify, but I think it was like $35 an hour.
That's
and
not bad.
Ended up costing a couple $100. I don't remember the exact numbers.
Geez, really?
Yeah.
Not bad. And so do you have to go back in and clean it up like we do with Thinking Storm, or is it a done deal?
No,
anymore?
they were just, bubbles and the editing, just like we've done. And I went through each one,
Okay.
decided whether or not I liked it or not. And
Okay. So
but
you
I
still have
haven't
an
sent
opportunity
anything
to
back
learn.
after.
Yeah.
I didn't send it back through the editor after it came back the first time. I just made all the changes I wanted to
Okay.
make, and then I was ready to submit.
So they're a step up from Thinking Storm type thing, right? How do they differ from Thinking Storm?
So Karen, considerably.
Oh, a lot more,
A lot more detail? Okay.
a
What
lot
were you
more
saying?
in depth. Because everything that I had submitted to her, I'd run through Thinking Storm and
That's what I thought.
Dr. Behling several times before that I ever sent it to the editor, and she found
Okay.
several things.
Okay. What were you gonna say, Dr.
I didn't
Boone?
have her cross-reference my citations like we were talking about a while ago. I did have her check my reference page, make sure I had all the, capital this and italics that and all that.
Yeah.
Make sure it's formatted right. But I did the cross-referencing myself.
Okay.
I went kind of old school on that. I have a spreadsheet with multiple tabs on it, a tab for each theme, have, like some information on each reference that I found. And then I just went back through it and just, meticulously one by one. Is it on the list? Is it cited in there? And backwards as well. Did I cite it in there? Is it also on my reference list?
I got it.
It took a few hours, but
You started that.
after it was all said and done, I knew it was all good.
Okay, thanks. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
I learned a lot of it. See, I don't want to be waiting around because stuff that in my mind that I thought, oh, that's not until later. I was really I misinformed myself, let's put it that way. I was misinformed about that. So the more I can get out of that, the better. The earliest. That was a terrible sentence structure, wasn't it? Earliest.
You're fine. Guys, stay on top of your writing. You own the process. If it's cheaper for you to go get the software to check your references and make sure they're all APA formatted, you decide. Whether it's an editor that can do it for you and you don't have to pay for that software, or you go get the software and you do it yourself, whichever path you feel more comfortable. But at the end of the day, Karen, I cannot repeat this any more times to make it clear. You have to make that decision. You've got to own the writing. You've got to own the references, that whole piece.
Right.
That is how you take what's in your brain and put it into your writing in a way that's going to get you to progress. So,
right. No doubt. It's just a good idea to hear all these different resources. Like I would have never thought to put it into the editors, when the editors are going through it. So good information.
Phil, thank you. Mong, what is your next deliverable and when's it due?
I have it down, chapters 1 and 2 on the 17th.
One and three, right?
Yeah.
Okay, I have 1 and 3 down. Once you turn that in, when will you be ready to submit chapter 2?
I should be ready. Maybe the 23rd or 24th. I could shoot for the 24th for chapter 2.
So either, no, and that's perfect. So when I give you guys a Friday deliverable for something, that's because Saturday mornings, I usually get up at like 4 o'clock in the morning and start grading. So that really helps me to have all of the deliverables that you guys are going to give me Friday night. So then I can I plan out Saturday between my individual calls with my students and grading papers. So if you guys don't get it to me by Friday night, then your time slot of 2 or 3 hours for me to review your document, I can give that to another student that might want to meet with me. So it's really important that you guys stick to your due dates. If you can't hit it, it's okay. If you can't hit it, it's okay, unless it's a deliverable for that class that you haven't given me something the whole class and you really need it in order to pass. But if it's a deliverable between you and I, it's just really nice if you can get it to me by Friday at midnight, then that way I know if I don't have that 2 or 3 hours to grade your paper, I can offer it to another student, or instead of taking 10 days on Mong's paper, maybe I can pull him in from the next weekend and do it earlier. So every time you guys, it affects the whole class when somebody misses a due date, because each paper is a couple hours of my Saturday and Sunday. So I wanted to share that with you guys so that you know, it's not just me trying to be a nag, it's that I only have 12 hours on Saturday and Sunday to do the grading for GCU. And if there's a 3-hour slot that opens up, other students would really appreciate not having to wait until the next Saturday to get their work done. I can pull it in. So just keep that in mind when I'm asking you for your deliverables. It's because I really try to beat that 2-week turnaround time for everybody in this class, but I can only do that when I know what's coming, right? So just something to keep in mind. Shannon, how are you doing on your data collection? When's your next deliverable and what is it?
I don't really have a deliverable. I set it out for this class. I'm thinking I'm going to come back in September, just because everything I'm doing is data collection. So I've completed my survey portion. I received 56 feedbacks, and I gave the July 31st deadline. So my focus group is scheduled, because of the holiday, for September the 7th, and I've identified a location, sent out invitations. I need 10. I was going to ask 15, but I'm struggling at 9, so I continue to try to get some more, but on that date, I'm just going to push forward. So as soon as the 7th comes, I'm going to try to have my data written up and plugged into that outline within 2.5 weeks. So before the end of September 4 and 5, I want to get to you before that, within 2.5 weeks of the 7th.
So getting your 54 surveys is awesome.
Yeah.
I was holding my breath when you were telling me how many you had, because 50 is a minimum. For
Yeah.
54 survey is a minimum. So that's really good news. What are some of the things that you can do to get your 10 for it's a focus group on the 7th, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yes.
What else are you thinking of to try to get that last 1 or 2 participants?
So what I have thought about, even if they didn't do the survey portion, but would be willing just to do the focus group, if they do the consent and the demographic and get it back to me, I will plug them into the focus group as long as they meet the requirements, like being fully or provisionally licensed in North Carolina as a clinical social worker.
So if they do agree to be in the focus group and they haven't done the survey, is that what you're saying?
Yeah. So the portion that I'm using for my focus group is those that completed the survey, did a random drawing, pulled the numbers, sent out invitations. Focus group part is even harder than the surveys, because they have to give up time. I let them know it was 90 minutes and those type of things. So that's where my sample originally started from. But since I have almost went through all of those, it's just a few of those have not replied. But if I could get them to reply, I might have my focus group. But give it a couple of days, and then if I don't hear anything, then I reach out to a few more. So I'm trying to go make sure the whole 56 doesn't want to participate, and then because as long as they meet the requirements, and I didn't specifically say you have to do both parts, because in all actuality, if I only need 10 and I have 56, everybody wouldn't participate anyway.
I would try to get as many of those 56 to say yes to the focus group, and don't worry so much about like being random about who joins the focus group. Just take anybody.
Yeah, at this point.
Take anybody.
Yeah.
Reach out, do another reminder. And most cases, if they do agree to do the focus group, have them log in and do the questionnaire when they show up for the focus group.
Yeah. So with my initial, you do the consent and the demographic, and then the survey link is sent out to them. So if they're willing, I'm going to take my laptop. If they're willing, basically all I have to go in and one window is send them a link, and then they will go into their email, open it up, and the process for the surveys take about 10-15 minutes. So if they're willing to do that on spot, that'd be great too. It's just I'm not being choosy, and whatever and whoever, it's okay.
Okay.
Dr. Behling, I have a question. Can you incentivize people after, like at this point, without it being in your IRB, can you say, okay, I'm going to offer an opportunity drawing for an Amazon card, random drawing. Can you do that kind of stuff if it's not actually in your in your study design?
You can go back to that, but I will tell you that incentivizing after, try to be more proactive than that. So if you think even for a second that you're going to struggle with getting enough participants for the questionnaire, your focus group, your one-on-one interviews, do that before. Like, do whatever drastic, scrappy action you need to get. Way better to have 20 and only need 10 than to do 9 and think, now I got to bribe them with an Amazon card. Like, that is not good marketing. I mean, that is not good researching. That's desperation.
Yeah.
I strongly recommend
trying to send it back to IRB if you were going to do something like that. Would you have to send it back to IRB?
Not necessarily, but you will have to speak to it when you write up your chapters, and you need to have your committee buy off on it, because we got to make sure that your incentive is legal and approved by GCU. Like, some students get really creative, and some get a little desperate. It's normal in qualitative research to not get enough participants. That's why sometimes studies last 2 to 3 years. It's the data collection part. It's not the other stuff.
Because in my write-up, I did say that my original quota for my sample for the focus group was 10, but if I couldn't get 10, I would settle for 8. So I did put that part in there. I'm trying to get my 10. I'm going to shoot for my 10, but if I have to go with 8, I did kind of put a backup plan in my chapter 3 and chapter 1 to kind of support if I don't get it.
But Shannon, keep in mind, if you get to 8, you invite a whole nother level of scrutiny from GCU, because our minimum is 10. You drop to 8, you are going to have a higher level of approval within GCU leadership. So it doesn't mean, okay, I shot for 10, I only got 8, I'm so sorry. It is now you're going to have to be escalated to a higher level of approvals within GCU. And then we're going to come back to you and say, did you do this? Did you do this? That's what happened to Dominique. She did enough, and then she had to spend almost an extra month trying to find, just scrapping around to try to find enough participants. So keep in mind that be as proactive in the front end to try to find enough participants. It's a much worse feeling when you're scrambling and trying to pay people to give you feedback.
Okay, because I have one more that I've got one yesterday, so I need one more, but I'm going to try to shoot for 3 more in case some don't show up. So I still got a couple of weeks.
And as far as data analysis, it's really important, Shannon, that once you have collected your input from your focus group, that we meet, you and I and your methodologist, that we meet, because I want to know, we want to see your pilot plan, right? So in the last several labs, I've mentioned that you need to go through with a pretend data set all the way through the tools that you're going to use to record your interview, to transcribe, to transfer it to whatever content analysis or thematic analysis tool you're going to use. This is a minimum expectation that you guys do that with a dummy set, that you record yourself with a friend, whatever that looks like, with your recording device, your transcription device, your theming and coding device. This is a minimum expectation. So once you have done that, then you go and do your data collection. And then you meet with your methodologist and we talk about, okay, now you're going to analyze your data. Walk me through what that looked like when you did it with your Smart Pen and In Vivo and whatever, Max QDA. Don't wait until you've already collected your data, analyzed your data, and then you write up chapter 4 and then have your methodologist and myself come back and go, whoa, what about this and this and this and this? That's why my students, we don't do it that way. You guys do a dummy set before you go out and meet with live participants, right?
Yeah.
Then you do your data collection. Then you come back to us and we talk and you show us how your data set, how it looked when you did it on a practice set. And then we give you tips and tricks and best practices. And then you go and analyze your data. You will move so much faster through this process and make much less mistakes if you let your committee be a part of this.
Okay, I have a question.
So hold on. So if you're a student that's like, you know what, Dr. Behling, I'm not doing that. I'm going to go collect my data. I'm going to go analyze my data. I'm going to write chapter 4 and I'm going to give it back to you in the committee. You're opening up yourself to moving through this process without the support of your coaches. Let us help you. But if you decide not to do that practice set with your tools, a lot of things can happen that we can help you to avoid. Okay, so you still own deciding which recording device, deciding, you know, what software you're going to use to do your theming and coding. You still own making those decisions, but I am encouraging you to practice first before you have live participants, and then you meet with your committee before you go out to do the data analysis, okay? Because I saw every single student that I've seen go through this process, they have a lot of things that they learned after that we can share with you, okay? Go ahead, Shannon, you were gonna make a comment.
Okay, because I know early on, before I think I even went to data collection, we did discuss me doing a trial with me recording and transcribing and then using a Max QDA and putting it in. I did that, but the part about meeting with you and Dr. Mortimer, that was not part of the recommendation. So do you want me to do it again and then present that stuff to you, or what do I do now?
No, let me be clear. So meeting with us is after you've collected your data, before you start analyzing it for real.
Okay, so after my focus group, I need to reach out to you to set up some time so we can discuss after I transcribe it or before I transcribe it?
I think before is better.
Okay, that's fine. Okay, yeah, and I just wanted to make sure that I didn't miss a piece because I did go do the mock one with I had recorded a meeting that I had at a spiritual thing, and it was different people talking, and I transcribed it, and then I went to Max QDA and kind of played around with it.
Okay, no, that's perfect. That's perfect. And then Philip, you as well. You're very, very close. So, and Jaitanya, you as well. So just make sure that you guys, if that's not super clear on, you know, how those steps work, make sure that we're connected when you actually start collecting your data, okay? All right, so that took a little bit of time, but I think it's really important that every month we meet, that we are going through step by step. Because what I'm finding is that as we're connecting with each student on this call on where they are in the process, different things that each student is going through is popping up, and every one of you guys will go through this as well. So you heard us talking about the writing piece, right? The reference piece. Now we're talking about the IRB piece and the AQR piece. These are all pieces that every single one of you, even though you're unique, your unique experience, your experience is going to be unique. There's going to be some a lot of similarities with the struggles, with the challenges, and with the learnings. Okay, so I think there's a whole lot of value with us continuing to do this, especially since you guys are on such a wide spectrum of where you are in the process. We do have about 15 minutes left, so I do want to spend a little bit of time on some things that I've seen pop up with the group that I want to make sure that we cover today. So I'm going to take just a minute. I'm going to share my screen, and we'll go through some of those things. And I'll send out this slide deck. We've done a couple of these things already as we've been chatting today, but I just want to make sure that that we have a chance to kind of look at it. So let me pull up my. Can you guys tell me if you can see my PowerPoint?
Yeah.
Okay, perfect, thank you. And I'm gonna, let this go away. I'm gonna go ahead and get into our first call. So there's a couple things that I wanted to cover here. So let's go through this just real quick. As you guys get further into the process, it becomes more and more important that you have the rhythm of your classes down. So there's been some changes to the ISP process. So just making sure that you're using the most updated ISP that's in your current class, and it has the reflections part of it. But what I wanted to encourage you here is the time management and project management piece of the ISP. So when you're ending a course, making sure that you take that time between the end of your current course and the beginning of your next course to kind of step back and take a pause point and think, okay, what's going on at my work? What's going on in my life? And what am I going to accomplish in my next class? As you have that mapped out in your mind, and you can kind of take a look at your work calendar and all those calendars and how they lay over on each other, then you step back and you work on your project plan for your next class. So what that means is that you take a look at your next 8 weeks. And I know some of you are on a 12-week cycle, but whether it's 8 or 12, the process is still going to be the same. So you take a look at your project plan, and I think about six months ago, we went through on an Excel spreadsheet, and I shared with you guys how to put together that project plan for what you want to accomplish each class to get you to your graduation date. So if you haven't been updating those as you've been going along, I encourage you to go back to that, dust it off, or use whatever. There's a ton of software out there that can help you to map out a project plan. Excel works really easy because it's super simple, but whatever that looks like, I encourage you to keep working on that, because what that does is it makes the week-to-week execution of it very simple. So you go into your project plan and you lay out what are the daily and weekly tasks with dates that align with your ISP for that course. And here's where it becomes really important that you don't look at your school schedule in isolation, that you're also including if you have business travel, if you have big deliverables, if it's back to school week, whatever those look like. So you're still making progress, but you adjust the deliverables to the pace of what's going on in your regular life. Then once you have your project plan, then you put that into your ISP. So your ISP, that should be where you spend the time to put the details. So every week you should have in there week 1 ends on September 15th, week 2, September 22nd, week 3, September 29th. And in each week, you should have 7 days. And in each one of those 7 days, what are you doing every single day? And don't just say working on my prospectus, working on my prospectus. That's not an executable tactic. It's not. Just writing working on my prospectus is too vague. This means you need to, on one screen, have your prospectus, and on the other screen, your ISP, and you say, okay, I'm doing my introduction on Monday, September 7th. And then I'm working on my next section, and you name that section, and I'm gonna work on that on Tuesday, the 10th, and so forth. And then if there's a day of the week that you can't work on your dissertation, maybe that's the day that you read 2 articles that you're gonna need to write the next section. So that maybe it's not writing every single day, but maybe it's going into Google Scholar or working with the librarian to find maybe a dissertation that is going to help you to see how the advancing scientific knowledge section is written so that you can mimic it. So that would be what you'd put on Wednesday, September 11th, is that you're going to find a dissertation and read that section so that you can write your section of your prospectus or your whatever chapter you're working on. That way, when you have your ISP done by the end of week 1 to start a course, you already know what you're going to be working on each week. But guess what? If you wait until week 1 to start working on your ISP, you already lost week 1. Because if you had a deliverable that was due in week 1 of that class, you didn't even figure it out until you're at the end of that week. So you already missed 7 days of progress. So I'm encouraging you that in the last week of your current course, or in the week between, that you already have your ISP well planned out, what articles you need to read, what sections you're going to write each day, and what you're going to do each weekend in order to achieve momentum and keep moving through your process. If you do that and you have that kind of detail, you can plan in your daily life. You can plan in, okay, I cannot do anything Saturday afternoon. I can't do anything Sunday morning between 7 and 1 p.m. because I go to church. But that means between 3 to 6 p.m. on Sunday, I need to write 3 sections, pull down 4 articles, and do 2 IRB quizzes, whatever that looks like. But this is a 20-hour-a-week job, but it's not in isolation. But you know from being in this program for this amount of time what the cadence of your life looks like. But if you don't plan it out in that detail, you will go week after week and month after month with not making the kind of progress you could have made if you have that plan. So what I'd like to see on your ISPs is that I don't need to see that you posted in LoudCloud. I don't need to see that you know, those postings in LoudCloud, that's just for GCU's participation points, not necessarily something that you can miss. So I'd rather that you spent your ISP planning to really build in what you're going to do each week. And then guess what? Your LDP messages, it's a copy and a paste, because you're just going to take week 1 from your ISP. You already have the 7-day plan that you already mapped out with the dates. You copy and paste that into your Monday message. And then guess what? On your Sunday recap, you go in red ink in that same email thread and you put what you accomplished. So you could say, yeah, I missed that date, but I will have it done by this date. And then you just make sure that you look at week 2 when you're doing your next Monday message, and just make sure that anything that you didn't finish from the week before, you pull in to your next Monday message. And this is how you make sure that Sunday night and Monday morning are not this mad scramble where you just, hey, Dr. Behling, I'm on track, see you later, right? That has no value to either one of us. So I might not always go in and comment back when I see your Monday message or Sunday recap, but I read them, and it's not for me. Those Monday message and Sunday recaps, those are for you. Part of it is it's required that you go into your LDP and you have active participation, but the most important part is that you're translating your individual success plan to actually the day-to-day tactical ways that you're going to achieve it. And I know you guys have been doing this for a little while, but I think sometimes we get kind of delayed by life. And sometimes things take longer than we think they will, and it gets a little frustrating. But I think if you have those daily wins and you have that daily plan and you have a realistic goal for each class, that is how you keep moving, and that's how you become a doctor. Your pace, and I know that I pushed you guys, right? And I asked, hey, when is your next deliverable? When is your next deliverable? I am not a chair because I like to push you guys to hit deliverables. I'm a chair because I'm going to help you graduate. But I know that having that cadence of just having progression and achieving those things, that is how you keep the momentum. The pace is defined by you, but I will be here to help to keep you on track. Remembering that when you get to a stage that your content expert needs to be involved, I want to spend just a minute on that. So we're talking right now about that submission process and how moving through these different phases, how important they are. But it's also important for you to be thinking about what's coming next. So some of the things that I've been seeing regarding your content expert, they can really help you in this process. And what I mean by that is a couple points. So 2 points that I wanted to make for your content expert. The first is when you have a deliverable that's going to come to me, it's important that you also reach out on the side to your content expert and let them know that it's coming. Because it might have been a couple months since they've seen your document and it might have changed quite a bit. And you want to make sure that they have time in their busy life, because you're not part of their daily scope right now, unless you're like later on in the program, right? And you're going through AQR and IRB, but maybe for some of you, they haven't been connected to your work for quite a while, and maybe it's changed quite a bit. So it's good for you to keep them notified. I notify them formally once I have your document. And then the second piece is if you're getting close to AQR and it's time for them to be doing defense calls, I just want to reiterate that sometimes your content expert might not realize that once you have been approved by AQR and it's time to schedule your defense, I will want to schedule your defense very soon. And it's up to you to help to make sure that they're available, that they understand that it's not going to be during regular business hours. Your AQR defense will probably be in the evening. It might be on a Saturday morning. If it's at the proposal level. So if it's at the formal full level, because it's a GCU faculty that will also be on that call, it will be during GCU time. But if it's just your defense call for your proposal, it'll be after hours. So some content experts are super flexible. Most of them are. But just making sure that you're aligned with them and you know, because the sooner you can get your defense done, the sooner you can move into IRB. And sometimes your content expert might delay your process by 2 to 3 weeks because they might not be super flexible and they might not understand that it's after hours, okay? What I wanted to spend just a little bit of time on here is just making sure that that we talk about that submission. So let me find where that is real quick. Hold on, as I kind of scroll around. When you're sending stuff to me, making sure that one, your deliverable in LoudCloud is separate from the dates that you just gave me that I wrote in my book, okay? Because in class, you're required to have 2 dissertation deliverables. Those deliverables need to align with your ISP that we agreed on. Now, sometimes there might be differences, right? We are normally on a very different cadence than week 4 and week 8 of your current class. There might be things that, like Shannon, for example, is on a very different cadence than the GCU class, because right now she's collecting data. Philip is on a very different cadence because right now he's going back and forth in IRB. So it depends on My deliverable with you is how to keep you progressing in the critical milestone that you're in right now. But the minimum expectation is that regardless of where you are with your deliverable to what you committed to, you got to make sure that you go in and you submit your deliverable to GCU's Loud Cloud on time, okay? Because that's something that GCU monitors. But just know, I don't ever grade what you put in the Loud Cloud Dropbox, ever. Because we're on a different cadence. If it's time for you to have a deliverable in week 4 of the class, and you say, "Hey, Dr. Behling, I'm in AQR. Like, I don't want you to go start another whole cycle on my chapters 1, 2, and 3 when I have when I'm like a week away from getting it back to you guys so I can go into AQR again." I'm not going to grade the draft that's in Loud Cloud because we're progressing at a much faster pace with another draft that AQR that you're still reviewing. So I don't want this to get complicated. So just keep in mind, it's really important that you hit the GCU requirements by having something in there. But when you're submitting to me for formal review, making sure that you put it in your that you put it in your LDP under the right folder. So do not put a deliverable for your committee in your Monday message. And I'm going to repeat that. Do not put a deliverable that you want that is ready for formal committee review in your Monday message. That is not where that is. You can mention it to me and say, "Hey, Dr. Behling, I hit my deliverable. I'm going to be sending it to you," and so forth. That's fine. But the formal process is that you put it in your proposal folder or your prospectus folder with your 10 points so that it's time and date stamped, so that I know what is the most recent draft you're submitting. It's time and date stamped for GCU, for the record. But then you also, and this is absolutely important, you have to email it to me, to my GCU and my Yahoo, and in the subject line for formal committee review. Okay, because what that does, that allows me to know exactly that it is the right draft. A couple students have not done this, and it's cost them almost a month because they just put it in their Dropbox. The committee went in and did a full review, but they had not updated it. So the committee reviewed the wrong draft. The student didn't realize it until the next draft was sent back. The committee was very upset because they're like, "Man, the student didn't fix anything I asked them to." And then the student came back and said, "Oh my goodness, that wasn't the right draft. I put my right draft in my Monday message." And the one in the, so they notified the whole committee that a draft was done. They put the updated draft in the Monday message, but not in the folder. The committee went into the folder, got the draft out. It was an old draft, and the committee was very frustrated because they spent a month giving feedback on a draft that the student had not done any work on. So see how that's not a foolproof plan? That's why it is so incredibly critical that you put it in the right folder, in the right email thread, right? And you email me for formal review in the subject line with your 10 points and the draft that you want reviewed. Then my process, I send that, I save it, I review it, I send it to your committee, and then I post it in the email thread that says for methodologist review. That way I have trained your methodologists that they only review the drafts that I have emailed to them, and that is also in the formal request review for your methodologist email thread. That way, 100%, they know it's coming from me and not from the student. It's the most updated draft, and I now have them on a time clock because they don't take a review request from the student. They only take a review request from me. So that way, we can also make sure that they stick to their deadline. Because I asked them, "Hey, Dr. Ziccarelli, Shelley's draft of Chapter 3 is coming to you. I expect your feedback on or before," and I give them a date 2 weeks in advance. And then a couple days before it's due, I remind them, hey, Dr. Ziccarelli, how are you on track on getting Shelley's document back? It's due in 3 days. So that even if they didn't, even if they weren't on track, this gives them 3 days so they can still hit their due date. So that's how I manage your committee. But following this process, I know it's frustrating sometimes, because if you don't follow this process, I'll come back to you and say, hey, dear student, I see your Monday message from 7 days ago. Your time didn't start 7 days ago. It starts now, because I don't have your draft yet. You didn't submit it to me in the formal process, so there's no way for me to know that this was the right way. So I'm just encouraging you guys to please make sure that you follow that so that you don't lose any time. Okay, the next thing that I wanted to mention here was that as you guys are going through and you're getting ready, and I'm gonna stop sharing and we're gonna jump back in here together. As you're getting ready to move into another chapter, or you're combining chapters, or you're moving from your prospectus to your proposal, it's really, really important that you take a minute and do your criterion self-audit. I've been seeing that several drafts are coming to me, and because you've been doing such heavy revisions, or you've been working with an editor or thinking storm, and sometimes key things are getting edited out because maybe it was connected to a bubble comment and you deleted that bubble comment on accident. But it's really important that the key phrases that are required in the criterion table are included in your section. Let me give you an example. So there was a student recently sent in a section in chapter 3 that talked about units of measure, and it talked about certain very specific parts that are in the criterion table expectation. And I know that I had seen those things in a student's previous draft, but as they had edited that section, those key phrases and some of those items that were required were removed. So when the committee comes back in to look at it, they're like, wow, you gave yourself a 3. I'm giving you a 0 because it's not even in here. So we've talked about this in previous labs, but I wanted to give you guys a reminder here as well, that it is so critical that when you get a draft from me and you see all of your methodologists and myself's comments, follow this process. Read all of the feedback within 24 hours. And then send me a response and say, Dr. Behling, I got your feedback. I got my methodologist feedback. I do not have any questions at this time. Because what that does is that gives you an opportunity to say, Dr. Behling, I read Dr. Mortimer's comments. I don't understand his question about my hypothesis on this page, and here's a screenshot. I don't understand what he's asking me for. Or Dr. Behling, I don't understand what my content expert was asking for in chapter 2 in the advancing scientific knowledge section. I thought I answered that. Can you help me with the rephrasing? Because her rephrasing doesn't make sense to me. If you give me that within 24 hours, roadblock removed. You're not stuck on it. Now you have taken the discipline to read through all the feedback. And now I understand what they're asking. I just got to go do the work, right? But if you get stuck on any comment, but you wait a week, now you lost a whole week, because then now you got to respond to me and say, hey, Dr. Behling, I'm sitting down to do my revisions from what you gave me last week, but I'm stuck on these couple comments. You give me those comments, it's going to take at least 4 or 5 days for your methodologist or myself to get you a response. Now you just delayed yourself 2 weeks, because we gave you feedback a week before, and then it's going to take a week or so, maybe 3 or 4 or 5 days to get a response from your methodologist. And then you got life, right? It might not be Friday and Saturday until you can start working. You just lost 2 weeks of a review cycle because you didn't have that discipline to read it within 24 hours. So I'm asking you to do this to help you. So you review within 24 hours, you let me know right away in an email. to my Yahoo account and my GCU, hey, Dr. Behling, I'm stuck on these points, or Dr. Behling, I'm good. I understand the feedback. I got a lot of work to do. I'm not stuck though. Then after you've read that, you give yourself just a few minutes, maybe it's a day, to internalize that feedback. Just kind of think about it, right? Let it settle. And then you go in, pull up your 10 points, pull up the feedback, and make the changes just to the 10 points. So you read through all the bubble comments, and if you have Dr. Mortimer as a methodologist, he's going to give you detailed feedback on every one of your sections in your global comments. You fix your 10 points. Don't start on the editing, don't start on the formatting and sentences being needed to be erased or whatever. Just 10 points. Did we tell you something about your sample, about your population, about your methodology or your design, or about your research questions, your purpose, your phenomena, your problem statement? Anything to do with those 10 points, fix those on your 10 points document first. Then step back, okay? Once you have your 10 points fixed, then go back to your prospectus or the chapter of your proposal and fix the 10 points throughout. Any section, any paragraph that has that 10 point in it, go fix those sections, okay? Because there will be a ripple effect. If you get feedback on your problem statement, you're going to want to go through your entire document, anywhere that you talk about your problem statement, and fix it throughout. And then fix the paragraph that's around it so that now it makes sense. Because remember, we talked about Frankenstein? Sometimes if you go in and just change your purpose statement, but you don't fix the rest of that section to now align with the change to your purpose statement, now it doesn't match. You might be still talking about the old components of your purpose statement when you have a new purpose statement in there. Or maybe you have a new design, but some of the terminology about your old design is still lingering in that section. And that's why try to do it in phases, right? When you eat a banana, you don't just take a big bite of a banana, you peel off the peeling first, right? So that's what I'm asking you, is take the time to make sure that you're not only addressing the exact bubble comment that someone put in your paper, but the meaning and the narrative around it. And that might also mean that you need to update a reference, because maybe the reference that you used to justify that statement, maybe it was perfect for that statement, but now you're being asked to revise that statement or that sentence or that paragraph. That reference may no longer apply. That reference may not now be the literature needed to support the thoughts that you were trying to convey in that section. You might need to go find another reference that supports from the literature your new narrative on what that item was supposed to be saying. So that's why making these changes in doctoral writing, it's so deep. Your brain should hurt with each paragraph that you write. There should be a little like blood coming out of your ear when you do this. And please, if blood starts coming out of your ear, call 911. but it's so deep, and it's not just changing a little part of it. It's changing the narrative behind it, literature behind it. So when I put on there that every week in your ISP you should read a dissertation, that is your cheat sheet to go find a dissertation that wrote it or articulated something, a section that you have some heavy bubble comments in. That's your opportunity to go find a published doctor that's your peer that recently graduated from GCU and see how they articulated it. Because if your committee's saying, you know what, you moved from a case study to a descriptive design, you got it about 50%, but you're not articulating it quite right. So it's not cheating to go find another student that articulated it well. look at how they chose their references to support and stand them up in their decision for that design or their decision for that data collection process. See how they articulated it and mimic it. Don't copy it, don't plagiarize yourself, but see how their narrative was presented, supported by literature, and that puts your head in the right place, okay? Because this is very complicated writing. But the more simple you make it on paper, the better. If there's resources out there to help you, go get them, go use them. But this is that self-check to the criterion table that I talk about, that you go through every section after you've done this heavy revisioning, right, that I just talked about the process. And before you submit it, hold for 1 day or 4 hours or whatever that looks like. Come back and just pretend that you're your methodologist, or just pretend that you're your chair. Read the criterion table expectation, and then if you need to, print it out and highlight. If in the criterion table it says purpose statement, go into the body and see if you literally wrote the purpose of this research is. Did you find it? Highlight it. Good. Check it off. Does it talk about the units of measure? Do you literally have that phrase? The units of measure are. Highlight it. Check it off. Right? That's what your committee is doing every time you send something in. There are keywords on the left-hand side of your criterion table that we're looking for. Don't be fancy. Don't be cute. Don't be flowy, righty. I don't know if that's a phrase, but you understand what I mean, right? Like, don't rephrase what the criterion table, what those terms are. Use the exact same keywords, because that's what we're looking for. If you try to be creative and use a different phrase, you can mean something different. Every word you choose matters. The reason that they put those specific words in the criterion table is those are the words that you need to fill in the blanks. My unit of measure is, the way I'm advancing this theory is. So, and that's what you do for every section, and then you turn it in. If you can have that discipline every single time you turn in a draft, you will graduate faster. I promise you will graduate faster if you have that behavior than if you do not. Because there's no way your committee can turn it back and say, you know what, Philip, you got zeros in this section because it's not even here. You know before you turn it in, you will never, ever get that feedback. You might get a 1.8 or you might get a 2.2, right? Because it's here, but it needs to be a little bit better, but you'll never get a 0. So those are the things that I want you to just keep in mind, especially right now. You guys are doing some really complicated sections, and it's really critical that you are aligning with the criterion table and that you're updating your references with your new narrative, okay?
Dr. Behling, can you speak real quickly to passive writing without having to go into English lecture? That's what I'm really getting dinged a lot with, and so I've been talking to other people about how to best correct that. Scientific writing is so different, right?
How about we do this? How about we take that offline and I can send some references in? I know I've already kept.
Oh, that'd be perfect. Okay.
How about we kept everybody 15 minutes past the time? But
okay.
And those kind of questions, that's another huge reason to reach out and get writing support. If you are struggling with active voice, if you're struggling with writing your document in past tense, those are things that if you have an editor and you can see how you wrote and you can see how they're suggesting, tell your teacher self to get past that. But I will take that action to send you guys out some resources on active voice, passive voice, for those of you that might find that beneficial.
Thanks, I appreciate that.
You're very welcome. So what I do want to open up the floor to any recommendations that you guys would like us to cover for our September lab. Any specific topic that you'd like to cover. I'm looking to bring in a guest speaker. I'm looking to bring in maybe some. Karen brought up a a comment about passive voice, active voice, and that scholarly writing, I can bring in some resources for writing if you'd like. But I'd like to hear from the team. So when I send out the meeting notes, please remember to do a Zoom recap. And then I will send out a recording of this. Please put it in your Zoom libraries. If you guys could keep that in your folders, that would be great. And then if you can respond back to me in your Zoom recap with any suggestions that you have for September's lab, and that way we can continue with specific help on. Any other comments or questions from today before we go?
Have we had anything on quantitative data analysis and the write-up in that? I know you spent a lot of time on qualitative, and Dr. Quaid came, and that was great, but I don't recall if we did quantitative, and if we didn't, is there a possibility to have a speaker on that?
Yeah, let me keep that in mind. If you could share any specific questions that you have,
Okay.
either bring some resources or a guest speaker, just depending, and then we can go from there. All right, you guys. Thank you again. It's been nice to see everyone. Thank you for being here, having your cameras on, and being actively involved in it. I do love to see your smiling faces, and I look forward to next month. And I have all of your deliverables written down, so.
Oh, God.
Oh, boy.
Don't write mine down.
You're all written down, so no, but that helps me to make sure I know where you are and how I can help. So reach out to me if there's anything else that I can do to support your journey. And if not, the next 4 weeks is gonna go by really fast, and I will see you then. Bye, guys.
Bye, Dr.
Bye.
Behling. Bye, everybody.